All right, let's talk about something that's right at the heart of how our societies are supposed to work. We're going to dig into the really delicate and honestly pretty fragile relationship between the rule of law, democracy, and citizenship. So, to really get this, I want you to picture something with me. Think of a just society as this complex machine, right? And it's powered by three huge essential gears that are all interlocked. Now, here's the catch. They absolutely depend on each other. If even one of those gears jams up or breaks, the whole machine just grinds to a halt. Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about the problems, we first need to get a really clear picture of the machine's blueprint. Let's take a closer look at what each of these fundamental gears actually is and what it does. So our first and, you could say, foundational gear is the rule of law. This is a simple but incredibly powerful idea that we are governed by laws, not by the random decisions of powerful people. It means that everyone, and I mean everyone, from you and me to the president, is under the same set of rules. No exceptions. This whole gear is built on things like a clear separation of powers and, of course, equality for all before the law. The second gear, which locks in perfectly with the first one, is democracy. And look, this is about so much more than just showing up to vote every few years. It's the entire system that makes sure that the ultimate power rests with the people. You know, the essential parts: popular sovereignty, having lots of different political parties and ideas, free and fair elections, and, this is a big one, freedom of expression and a free press. That's how we can have real debates and keep an eye on things. And that brings us to the third and final gear: citizenship. You can think of this as the official link between you as an individual and the state itself. It's the thing that gives you a whole set of rights, but also duties. Now, there are two ways to look at this. You've got formal citizenship, which is basically just your nationality. But then you have active citizenship, and this is the one that really matters, which is all about actually using your civil, political, and social rights. And here is where you can see just how deeply connected these gears really are. A single action can jam all three of them at the exact same time. So just imagine the government decides, you know what, we're banning any newspaper that criticizes us. Boom! Instantly, you have an attack on the rule of law because it violates fundamental rights. It's an attack on democracy because it kills the free press and silences debate. And it's an attack on citizenship because it robs people of the information they need to be active participants. See, they all go down together. All right, so we've built our machine. We understand the gears. Now let's look at the cracks that threaten to tear it all down. And what's so concerning today is that a lot of the biggest threats, well, they aren't coming from outside forces. They're coming from inside the system itself. We are not talking about some old-school military coup or a violent revolution. The threat today is much quieter. It's called democratic erosion. It's this slow, creeping process where leaders who were elected totally legitimately start using the very tools of democracy, like passing laws, to slowly take it apart from the inside. They just chip away at the checks and balances, little by little, until there's not much left. A very common strategy you see here is something called authoritarian populism, and it leans heavily on a certain type of language. The leader paints themselves as the one true voice of the people, and they're always fighting against some corrupt elite, which usually means judges, journalists, you name it. This whole story is designed to divide society and make it seem okay for them to grab more and more power. Now, a key weapon in this whole playbook is disinformation, and its goal isn't just to spread a few lies. The real goal is to poison the entire public square. It's a systematic attack on trust in government, in the courts, in the press, even in science. It shoves people into their own little information bubbles and fuels this toxic polarization that makes having a reasonable conversation almost impossible. So you can see how all of this starts to snowball into a much bigger crisis of power and trust. And that puts an enormous amount of pressure on one institution in particular, the courts. This brings us to a really tricky subject: judicial activism. This is what happens when courts start making big decisions on issues that normally elected politicians would handle. And it's a total double-edged sword. On the one hand, people who support it say it's essential for protecting the rights of minorities when the government won't. But on the other hand, critics are quick to warn that you're letting unelected judges basically govern, and that's a huge problem for democracy. Here's a perfect example of this dilemma. Let's say Congress just fails for years and years to pass a law about retirement benefits for a certain group of workers. So, finally, the Supreme Court steps in and just sets the rules itself. So what happened? Well, a social right was guaranteed for citizens, which is good. But it also raises this massive question about the separation of powers.
I mean, where does the court's job end and the politician's job begin?
All these tensions, the political fighting, the questions about the courts, they all feed into this much bigger problem, a crisis of representation. You see it everywhere. Endless corruption scandals, political campaigns that cost a fortune and feel totally disconnected from real life, and this growing feeling that politicians are just serving themselves, not the public. And what's the result? People just check out. You get widespread apathy and this really dangerous disbelief in the whole system.
So, this brings us to the most important point. If our machine, our democracy, is showing all these cracks and is starting to break down, whose job is it to fix it? And this is where the whole thing comes full circle, right back to us, right back to the citizen. This crisis of representation, it isn't just some abstract political idea. It boils down to a very, very personal question that every single one of us has to ask ourselves. Do you feel represented? Does the system as it is right now actually speak for you?
So what's the antidote to all of this? Well, there's no magic fix. The answer is actually found in that third gear we talked about at the beginning. The solution is active citizenship. It means we have to go beyond just the simple act of voting. It means getting involved in the concrete, day-to-day exercise of our rights, being informed, showing up in our communities, and holding our leaders accountable.
So, as we wrap this up, the real takeaway isn't just about understanding the problem. The health of the rule of law and our democracy, it's not just in the hands of judges and politicians. It all depends on that citizenship gear being active and engaged. The system is only ever as strong as the citizens who take part in it. So this final question isn't just something to think about. It's a call to action. What's your next step going to be?